Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Favorite Bands A to Z, the show we're doing each and every day throughout the month of July, where we start with the letter A, go to the letter Z, each day picking a letter, picking a favorite band or artist. Let's start with that letter. If it's artist, generally going by the last name. That's kind of how we're running these. And I'm going to pick my favorite album from that favorite band, from that letter, and also a runner-up and a favorite album there as well. So today we have arrived at the letter G. This was another one of those pretty easy ones for me. All right. Although I have a lot of bands that start with G that I love a lot. A lot of bands and artists that I really, really dig with G. But when it came down to it, there's really two that stand a little bit above the others. Okay, so while I absolutely love and adore Grand Funk Railroad and Gillan and Golden Earring and Rory Gallagher, right? When it came down to it, it's all about Genesis for me when it comes to the letter G. Genesis for me when it comes to the letter G. And Foxtrot, my beloved Foxtrot. I mean, the Peter Gabriel era is one of the most special eras, times in any band's history for me. Just absolutely love this album. I mean, come on, Watcher of the Skies, that haunting Mellotron, Timetable, Get 'Em Out by Friday. We've got Can Utility and the Coastliners, Horizons, and of course the big epic Supper's Ready, which finishes it out. You know, there was something so magical about Peter Gabriel, Michael Rutherford, Phil Collins, Steve Hackett, and Tony Banks. I mean, just that whole configuration, to me, is just one of the greatest lineups, one of the greatest bands of all time, whether it's prog, rock, or anything, right? Any kind of music. There's just, it's just a shame that they didn't really reach their true apex of popularity during that time. It wasn't until Peter Gabriel went on to form a solo career and Phil Collins stepped out from behind the drums to take over lead vocals that the band really started to, take their strides. But of course, we're talking about mid-late 70s and going into the 80s when a lot of these prog rock bands were becoming, more poppy, right? And then they were allowed to kind of take all of their talents and bring it more to the mainstream. And Genesis were one of those few prog rock bands that were able to do that successfully, creating some, Trick of the Tail, Wind and Wuthering, awesome stuff, right? Duke, great album. And then there were three, I had mixed feelings about some of the 80s and 90s albums, but I do like them. Abacab, Self-Titled, there's some great music on those. But for me, it's all about the Gabriel era, Nursery Crime, Trespass, Selling Them by the Pound. Of course, The Great Lamb Lies on Broadway. To me, that's that's mythical progressive rock right there. That's stuff I just absolutely love. So for me, it was a no-brainer, absolute no-brainer, to pick Genesis here as my number one, as my favorite for G. And the runner-up was also pretty easy. And trust me, they're not that far behind Genesis. I stumbled upon this band. I'd always heard of them, but I didn't start listening to these guys till the very early 90s. I remember sitting there, it was in Tower Records in Nanuet, or was it Nyack? No, Nanuet, New York. Tower Records in Nanuet, New York. I used to go either to there or the one down in Paramus, New Jersey, fairly regularly. I would just go, and I generally would spend time there maybe before going to the airport to go on a business trip. I would purposefully leave a couple hours early, and I would just go stop in at either one of those Tower Records, and I would just spend hours going through CDs and just looking at all sorts of stuff and buying a lot of stuff, right? So I'd always heard, in the early 90s, I was really starting to get into hot and heavy progressive rock because, the transition of the 80s into the 90s for heavy metal, I was a big heavy metal head for all throughout the 80s. It was a weird period. So a lot of metal bands were starting to go back underground or changing their sound to fit in with grunge and alternative. And I started to really get turned on to a lot of the classic prog bands that I hadn't listened to before, as well as a lot of the newer ones that were starting to pop up. So I'd always heard about this band, Gentle Giant, never really listened to them. They were never huge here in the States, right? So I was going through the G's, and I happened to stumble upon Gentle Giant. And I was like, oh, that's this band. And I started looking through some of their CDs, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a chance on these guys. And I actually bought Three Friends. I bought Octopus, and I bought Acquiring the Taste. Those were the first three that I got. And I remember first impressions was like, yeah, this is really weird, this is really different, but I really dig this. And before long, I had like the entire catalog, and I just love the eclecticism, the stunning virtuosity of this band, their ability to kind of go everywhere and anywhere, and yet it all kind of made sense, even though, you know, every fiber of my being was telling me this is probably the weirdest shit I've ever listened to in my life, but I love it. And that spurred on like 30 odd years of me just absolutely loving this band and just appreciating them, everything that they've done. You know, this Giant for a Day I don't really care for too much, but the whole rest of the catalog I just absolutely love. And so of course, Gentle Giant is my runner-up, and trust me, they're not that far behind Genesis. And picking a favorite album from them has always been tough. I remember when I did the album ranking for them like a year and a half ago or something. It was so difficult. And I think every time I have a conversation with someone about Gentle Giant favorite albums, my favorite album changes, because there's probably like 3 albums that constantly shift. No, 4 actually, that constantly change as my favorite, depending on the mood you catch me in. You know, some weeks I'll be like, yeah, it's definitely that one. Yeah, it's definitely that one. So it's, you know, it's usually either Octopus or Three Friends. Three Friends is the first one I ever heard, so I have a soft spot for that. Freehand or In a Glass House. It's usually one of those 4. But I will say that Power and the Glory and Acquiring the Taste are not far behind, generally speaking. Interview I love a lot. Today, I sat there, I looked through all the 4. I was going back and forth. I'm like, geez, I don't know. I'm going to go with In a Glass House today, just because I couldn't make a decision, and I just absolutely love this album, start to finish. So great. The Runaway, An Inmate's Lullaby, Way of Life, Experience is so good. A Reunion, and the title track, In a Glass House. You know, just man, this is just complex and quirky and upbeat. I mean, all their albums just have such like eclecticism. Yes, that's the word. Whether you want to call it a head-on collision of progressive rock and little bits of jazz and classical and medieval music and just blues. I mean, it's just got all this stuff, hard rock that's just kind of colliding and zigzagging. Most of the band contributes vocals. They all play multiple instruments. So you've got guitars and bass and violin and cello and xylophones and Hammond organ, Moog synthesizers, Mellotron, saxophone, everything you could possibly imagine, just kind of doing all this weird stuff that at first listen doesn't really seem to make sense, and then you realize, wow, these guys are really from another planet. It totally does make sense. So there you have it. Gentle Giant and Genesis. My winner for G, my pick for G, my runner-up for G. Favorite albums for both, at least at least today anyway, right? So, but yeah, props to Grand Funk Railroad, right up there as well. Props to Gillan, Golden Earring, Rory Gallagher, Gamma. There's a lot more, but that's these two. It's all about these two for right now. So, curious to see what your picks are for G in the comments below, and pick your favorite band or artist that starts with G, your favorite album, your runner-up, your favorite album. Tomorrow, of course, we move on to H, another fairly difficult day with a lot of really good choices. I think I have that one handled, though. And visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Coming up, more of this tomorrow. Tonight, we've got the return after a week break for July 4th weekend, the Hudson Valley Squares. The topic of tonight is we're going to be picking and talking about some of our favorite bands that have 2 or more lead singers. Okay, so 2 or more guys in the band who they all sing. And some of our favorite picks for that. Tomorrow, we have got as well in the Prague seat. We're going to be talking about some of our favorite American U.S. prog bands and our favorite albums by them. Wednesday is, of course, What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility Day, new product review day. So we got some new releases that we're going to be talking about. Thursday, The Monsters Den. Chris Allo, Rich Catino, and myself will be laying out some of our favorite 70s and 80s exploitation films. And, of course, Martin Popoff is back for Joining me at the Fun House on Friday morning. All right. We also got tonight Dee Snider coming on the show. Dee Snider, of course, of Twisted Sister fame. He's got a brand new solo album coming out on Napalm Records. He's coming on the show to talk about that. So stay tuned for that and a whole lot more. We're also going to get you over the next day or two or three. I'm going to rank the Peter Gabriel solo albums for you. So speaking of Genesis, it's going to be Peter Gabriel Day as well. So stay tuned for that and a hell of a lot more here on the channel. Got to reschedule Lynn Versace to come on so we can rank the Steve Morse Band catalog. Just got to kind of circle back with her on that. So that's coming up too as well, hopefully this week. And yeah. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Click on that notification bell if you want to make a channel donation. We have a link to the Ko-Fi page below. Remember, all your donations are greatly appreciated and go towards buying more stuff to review, to fill holes in catalogs so we can do more rankings, all that sort of thing. Kind of just goes right back into the purchasing funnel to get more stuff to talk about here, even though I got a million things to talk about on the shelves already. Sometimes it's cool to be able to, if I'm missing a couple CDs from a catalog, I go out and get them so I can do ranking shows, all that kind of stuff, new product releases, all that sort of thing. So as well, we got the merch page. All right, we got 3 brand new catchphrase shirts, right? So for all of you who took part in the whole kind of online comment poll type of thing, we've got the Sea of Tranquility, All the Damn Time shirts. We've got More Will Than Skill from Ryan Scow. We've got I Got the Olds from Chris Allo. We've also got Monsters Den shirts. We've got Hudson Valley Square shirts, all sorts of different SOT logo shirts and cool things, as well as my other channel, Comic Book Users. We have shirts for them as well, and mugs and all that sort of thing. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Well, we'll see you later today with Hudson Valley Squares and Dee Snider tonight coming up, and then tomorrow morning we'll be back here with Favorite Bands A to Z. So thanks for watching. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.